Okay, welcome in Dharma Boots. I think after yesterday, where maybe I was a little bit on a little bit more raw than I would have liked, a little bit more unfiltered. We're gonna do something a little bit different today. Not bad, just different. So I'm gonna actually kind of contradict myself a little bit. I'm gonna go back and I know what we had talked about yesterday with the Javelin Horror playing weird games with the move cycles and all of that. I am going to kind of tell you my army story, and we'll take it from there. And so that's kind of what I want to, kind of what I plan on doing today. So yeah, and it will be dharmic. Don't worry about that. But bear with me for this one. So. watching live, do more meditation after the service is over. If you're watching after the service is already completed, do feel free after the 5 minutes to just pause, add your own meditation in, and then come back whenever you're done. Yeah. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so I had kind of brought two passages, one of which I'm going to spend more time on than the other, and one of which obviously I'll spend a little bit less time. To kind of contradict what I said yesterday, I'm going to granted, yes, I was talking Dharma, and yes, I was real specific about like what that meant, especially in terms of like the Buddha rejecting abuse and how I kind of perceive much of my time in the chaplain corps, specifically. However, it is always good to have reminders, both dharmic and otherwise, and in this case, I was reading through a passage because I wanted to look at it from the lens of somebody a little bit more modern that might be able to speak a slightly different kind of language to understand what that means. And what it means to essentially say, look, no, I'm not going to put up with this abuse. That's on you. That's your business. It's your thing. You own that. Because that kind of puts me in a position where I'm looking at things as being incredibly solid, being very, very, very firm, like timelines, schedules, right? And part of that was me kind of interacting with that news in a way that was probably less than dharmic, not particularly healthy, and not particularly kind. So, to kind of counteract that, I'm looking at Pema Chodron and a passage on nothing solid and basically impermanence and how all things change. So what she says is, moving away from our experience, moving away from the present moment with all our habits and strategies always adds up to restlessness, dissatisfaction, and unhappiness. Yeah, which is exactly where I was. The comfort that we associate with concretizing and making things solid is so transitory, so short-lived. Moving into our experience, whether it's the opening experience of love and compassion or the closing down experience of resentment and separation, brings us an enormous sense of freedom, the freedom of nothing solid. Something about nothing solid begins to equal freedom. In the meantime, we discover that we would rather feel fully present to our lives and be off trying to make everything solid and secure by engaging our fantasies or our addictive patterns. We realize that connecting with our experience by meeting it feels better than resisting it by moving away. Being on the spot, even if it hurts, is preferable to avoiding. And as we practice moving into the present moment this way, we become more familiar with groundlessness, the fresh state of being that is available to us on an ongoing basis. This moving away from comfort and security, this stepping out into what's unknown, uncharted, and shaky, that's called liberation. And while I still hold that at least the portion of it where they were looking to move as many people as they could, they just needed bodies stateside, for whatever move cycle it was, I forget. And they wanted, I wanted to be here because that was more stable. Well, sometimes it's great to take the advice of Dharma masters and venerable nuns into account and say, okay, maybe that's not actually the right answer. Now, in this case, the fact of the matter is they looked at how long it was going to take for my daughter's paperwork to get done, and one of the senior chaplains had some kind of meeting with a senior diplomat and was asking specifically about my case. And apparently the senior diplomat was like, yeah, no way in hell that paperwork is getting done in time for that move. That's not a thing. Which he took back to the chaplains who manage our personnel, and was like, yeah, you can't do this. Like, that's not a thing. You're basically telling him to abandon his kid. That's stupid. And and so they kind of had to change course, which they did. Right? That's another example of kind of actually a rare example of the Chaplain Corps being a little bit groundless, because they had originally been very clear that was their plan. We're all supposed to just put up with it and participate. Well, not if it means abandoning my kid. I'm not doing that. Sorry. Not sorry, actually. Sorry, not sorry. Definitely applies here. But I do need to be a little bit more flexible and a little bit less grounded in the stability. Even if that's probably psychologically better for a kiddo, I need to understand that yes, sometimes the Chaplain Corps is going to make you do some things that I maybe don't necessarily, that are maybe not necessarily the most stable for family situations. Maybe that also includes some things that are that perhaps I need to lean into the groundlessness. I need to lean into that discomfort that Pam was talking about. Which brings me back to my Army story. So, with that in mind, right, why did I come into the Army as a chaplain? Why did I intend to come into the Army as a chaplain in the first place? What was my point in doing? What was my purpose in doing so? What was the intention there? And for me, so for a lot of chaplains, it's like, oh, I'm going to go and minister. I'm going to go and do all these services, and I'm going to do, I'm going to win all these souls for whatever faith group I'm part of. And I don't care about any of that at all. None of it. So, when I came into the Army, we were required to write a little essay, one-page essay, double-spaced. So they're trying to make sure that we can figure out how to be concise, because as chaplains we can ramble on and on and on and on. I'm doing it right now. But we had this tendency, and so they wanted it to be short. So I had one page to get off my answer to the question, why do I want to be an Army chaplain? And my answer was, okay, well, I look at it from a very specific standpoint, right? There's my home temple is very much invested in this concept of we are not here to minister in the temple. We're here to minister in the community. We're supposed to be out there with people, taking care of them, helping them to see past themselves, to see the Dharma where possible. And if they're not Dharmic, cool, we help them anyway, right? We still offer them salvation, we still offer them help, we still offer them whatever it is that we can offer them, whatever's appropriate to their situation, in a way that doesn't, that takes care of them. And here's where this gets kind of interesting for me, right? So I looked at it from a standpoint of, as I was writing this little one-pager, I looked at it from the standpoint of the Jizo Bodhisattva, the Earth Store Bodhisattva. And there's actually a whole book on, a whole really good book by Jan Chosen Baez, and she's a Buddhist thinker, and pretty sure she's still a nun. And her stuff is just so good, right? So this one, I've worked with him quite a bit because he's kind of my dharmic inspiration for doing a lot of the things that I do. We've talked in the past about how he is the king of vows, right? He/she, because sometimes Jizo comes even in the scripture. In some previous lives, he was female, he was male, he was this, he was that. And so we have this figure that exists, as Jan Chosen Baez put in the little subtitle, guardian of children, travelers, and other voyagers. Well, warriors in combat are traveling, usually, and they're on a voyage of various sorts, right? It may not be great voyages, but it's certainly a voyage. And I looked at that and I said, okay, well, he's the king of vows, and his vows vow was that he's not going to reach full enlightenment. He stopped right before getting there. He's not going to reach full enlightenment until all the hells in all the realms are cleared. There's power in that. There's strength in that. There's compassion in that. There's a deep loving kindness in that. And so, if he's not going to give up until all the hells are cleared, and we have this idea from General Sherman back in the Civil War that war is hell, and he's not wrong, it is. War is definitely hell. A hell that sometimes people decide they want to go back to because the trauma, whatever. Anyway, so I looked at it and I said, okay, well, we're supposed to be out in the community. We're supposed to be trying to serve the community. We have this figure who's not going to give up until all the hells are cleared, and we know that war is hell, and we know that at the time there weren't any Buddhist chaplains in the army. There was one in the Navy, and I will still to this day call her a bulldog because she is. She's the strength it took for her to do that was incredible. And so I looked at that and I said, okay, we have war is hell, not leaving until all the hells are cleared. Here's my mission. Here's my mission right here. It's super easy. Right? It's right in front of my face. Right? I will come and serve as many of these soldiers as I can until such time as all the hells are cleared. Until such time as the hell of war is, as best I can, cleared. Now, I'm probably not going to live long enough to see the end of war. There have been many, 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 many before me who have tried, and humans just keep fighting. However, while I'm still here, I still have the capacity to help them to see past that experience in war, to see beyond that, to offer them a glimpse of a future post-war, to offer them a glimpse of a future wherein they can integrate that experience, their experience of war, whatever it looked like, and come out stronger and come out better on the other end. So I'm going to do that, and that's what I'm here for, right? So as I was thinking about it yesterday, and as I was kind of going about what I was kind of talking about in terms of not giving into and rejecting the abuse that I have often seen from other chaplains in the chaplain corps. That's a part of war, and that's a part of hell too. And as much as I can reject it, I have to understand that that's a thing that they do. I have to come to terms with and understand that no, I can't reject them as human beings as well. I can reject the abuse all day, every day, and I will, because the Buddha was right about that. You don't partake in that. You don't give in to the abuse. You don't allow that to take over. As you're doing that, though, you can't forget that there are human beings underneath that abuse, and those human beings need just as much care, compassion, and respect as everybody else does, even if they're not always willing to give it themselves, even if they're not always willing to see it themselves, because they have higher level concerns that they got to deal with. Well, if those higher level concerns entail abusing others just so you can make numbers and make stuff look good and make somebody happy, I guess, that's fine, but that's wrong. And that I will not have a part of. Right? So as I'm kind of going about this, right, yes, I still have to help. I still have to offer them the same care, compassion, and respect as I would, private so-and-so that I see on a more frequent basis. But I don't have to allow that to kind of take root in me. I don't have to accept that abuse. I can reject it and say, no, that's wrong. That's the wrong answer. And I can also look at it and say, Well, if that's the only way that they know how to do things, if that's the only way that they're going to do things, maybe I can give consideration to saying enough's enough. Because, like Harvey Dent slash Two-Face said in one of the Batman movies, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain, right? If I can either look at it and say, okay, this is wrong and I'm not going to support it. I'm going to exit. I'm going to make my exit for moral and ethical reasons. Die the hero. Or I can stay in a little bit longer, and there's a chance that they would push me into some similar kind of position where I'm making those decisions and I have to sit there and do things that are less than moral, less than ethical, less than compassionate, less than loving, things that don't allow me to practice loving kindness. Those things exist. And I have to weigh that. Do I consider exiting on moral grounds, or do I stay in? Do I understand that everything is groundless, that everything is impermanent, that my time in the military is impermanent, it's temporary. It's not designed to be a permanent thing. Like, the only people who exit the military in uniform are dead. Like, specifically, like in a cemetery in their uniform, dead. Right? Everybody else has an ETS or EAS, or whatever the Air Force and Space Force call it, right? You have a time where it's your time and that's the end. You have to understand that all service is impermanent. I will not be serving in this role forever. There will come a time when I have to jet off. Am I still going to keep doing things to help service members and to help those who are serving? Yeah. Yeah, I am. Does that necessarily mean I'm going to be doing so in uniform? No, it definitely doesn't. When that transition occurs, I don't know. I really don't. Maybe it'll come sooner. Maybe it'll come later. Maybe. It's a possibility. A very strange and unlikely possibility, but maybe those who are running the personnel actually get their act together, do some talent management, and figure out how to assign everybody in a way that makes use of that talent so that we don't keep losing people, so that we're not incredibly short personnel. Maybe. We'll see. Unlikely, but it's possible. And in the meantime, I will follow the dharmic inspiration of those figures that have done so, that have decided to make that vow and to say, not leaving until this is done. I will follow that inspiration and say, okay, I will stay here. I mean, obviously I'm staying here, because I'm not abandoning my kid, right? That would be stupid. Just to go back for a year, in the Army, where they would then be like, okay, well, yeah, your year's up, cool, we don't need you anymore, right? I'm not doing that. I'm not abandoning my kid for that. That would be abjectly stupid and immoral and all kinds of unethical. I'm not doing it. But while I'm here, I can keep going until such time as that mission is complete, as that mission is done, until such time as I am told, okay, time's up, go home. Right? So until then, I will keep serving. I will keep helping people. And if either the Army or myself deems that such service is no longer the right thing, then I'll am still sticking around. I'm still taking care of those who are in hell before I eventually go there myself. And doing so in a way that helps them for as long as I am capable of doing so. So that's what I'm doing, right? Not accepting abuse, in fact, rejecting it, but at the same time understanding that everything is groundless. Everything is impermanent. Nothing is solid. We'll see what happens from there. So, that was kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I hope that made sense. Like, that was a very long ramble on my part. I apologize that I was rambling so long. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, let's go ahead and close up and get out of here. for watching Dharma Woods. We'll see you guys later.